A lot of things that sound too good to be true usually are. Space Terraria sounds like an instant win, right? I thought so too, until I actually played it for a while. Starbound was supposed to be the perfect space sandbox survival game. That was the promise. But the delivery of that promise was drop-kicked into the front porch like it came from Amazon. When I bought Starbound as a 13-ish-year-old, it was the only Terraria-like experience that I could have. Terraria had some stuff my parents weren't too keen on, and Starbound was the closest thing to it. But hey, I was at the peak of my Star Wars kid phase, so seeing a viable alternative to a game that my friends were playing at the time that was also set in space sounded absolutely epic. The potential for Starbound was massive. Entire planets to explore with various biomes each, upgradable spaceships, a storyline to play through, and tons of lore to find. All promised me hours of fun and entertainment. And to its credit, it did deliver on the experience it promised, just not in the way I expected, because the promise that Starbound gave was only a half-truth. I remember seeing Starbound for the first time on Steam. I saw the building, crafting, and survival and instantly knew I would love it because, like most of the young population, Minecraft filled about 97.97% of my brain. Being able to build my own world was the main excitement for me at the time. On top of that, exploring different worlds sounded amazing. One moment you're in a frozen wasteland and the next you're dodging acid rain in an alien jungle. I had never played a game on the scale of an infinite universe before, so it was mind-blowing to my 13-ish-year-old brain. I mean, it was 2017, and other games like No Man's Sky weren't even on my radar until a couple of years ago. So this is the only game I knew of that provided the experience and that I could run. There was so much to like about it. I mean, you could augment yourself with different technologies that let you dash, teleport, or turn into Samus. You could become a real estate tycoon and maximize profit while decreasing costs, if you know what I mean. There were NPCs with quest lines, even awaiting a shipment of 20 Arceus crystals from the Arceus mining facility. Dungeons to crawl, space pirates to fight, creatures to farm, crews to hire, cultists to burn, mechs to pilot, moon ghosts to run from, what I called Arceus chickens to commit pest control on, and if I kept going, it would take up too much of your precious time, so suffice to say, there is a lot to do in Starbound. The greatest part, which is probably the reason I stuck with the game so long, is the multiplayer. If you have watched any of my other videos, you will probably know that my cousin and I have been playing games since we were able to pick up controllers without breaking them. YT Scene, spelled this way for some reason, bought Starbound at around the same time as me, and the fun times building together, clearing bosses, exploring, learning how to exploit one or two bugs in the game were what took up most of my limited gaming time for the next year or two. I was only allowed to game for 1 hour on a weekend as a kid, and for a long time, Starbound was all that I played. It was survival crafting, so it scratched my Minecraft itch. YT used to call me every single weekend to play a game, and Starbound was one of the few that the both of us had, besides Animal Jam, but we were kind of aging out of that one. Overall, the foundation of the game and its combat, building, and multiplayer was a fantastic experience. But as fun and great as Starbound was, there was always something about the game that just felt off. The tentacled elephant in the room is, unfortunately, the story. It kinda chokes the game's vibe a little for me. You wake up as a space cadet, it's your graduation day, and then boom, tentacle monster wrecks Earth, scatters humanity, and sends you fleeing into space in a junk ship with barely enough fuel to limp to the next system. After learning how to build and survive in the game, you end up going to an outpost, meeting Esther, a retired protectorate veteran, yada yada yada. She's been studying the ruin, which is what destroyed Earth. The ruin was once sealed away by the cultivator, who brought balance to the universe, but it sacrificed itself to do this, and now you're the only one who can stop it. Yeah, it's another Chosen One storyline. If you play Starbound for the story, this might not bother you. The problem I have is that the apocalyptic threat of the ruin is supposed to be actively destroying planets. But if you decide to go and build a cute little mushroom palace for 100 hours instead, no consequences. The universe just politely waits for you to care, which completely throws out the entire vibe of the game. Now, I get why you'd still want to do the story. I mean, the bosses drop some pretty sweet loot after all. But to get to the boss, Esther sends you to collect gems that open the ruins gateway, each guarded by a boss. So you probably would want to go and fight the boss and get the gem. Cool, but first go scan furniture. A lot of furniture. Every epic boss battle in Starbound starts with a 2-hour scavenge hunt through alien living rooms. That's the experience. This is very boring, in case that wasn't clear. The dungeons are great, and the bosses are fun, but the freaking detective stuff sure as heck isn't. Sure, it gets you to explore different worlds, but it could at least have been changed up a bit from time to time. Like, maybe there's an informant that you have to save from cultists. There is a ruin cult in the game, so it could work. Or you need to retrieve a special item from a dungeon first, or gather materials to craft something important. But yeah, it's because of this that I haven't ever finished the story of Starbound. It's too boring for me and has an awkward, urgent, but not really feel to it. Now, there is a way to fix this, but I'll get to that in a second. I also never progressed very far in the game technology-wise. The furthest I ever got was making an EPG so that I could survive in space and on radioactive planets, which isn't very far into the tree so far as I can tell. Progression in Starbound is very disconnected from crafting and base building. The only incentive that you have to progress in the game is to further your base and technology. Now, you might think, well, yeah, it's a survival crafting game. That's how that works. And you're right, but the problem for me is the lack of connection and balance between exploration and progression. For example, Starbound has a hunger system, so of course you need to fix that issue and find a sustainable food source, which isn't that hard to do. Basic farming is an early game thing, but once you've got food sorted, you can ignore most crafting and base building. The game doesn't really push you to upgrade anything, because you can just brute force bosses with loot from previous boss dungeons. There is no need to spend time upgrading your armor or gear or building a base or exploring, because you can just cut through the main story. Now obviously I haven't played through the whole story, but I beat the first 4 out of 7 bosses on multiple character saves, and with 99% gear from the previous dungeon. Now, people who like to base build as their main reason for playing will probably have a different opinion from me, but I'm the kind of person who needs the game to give me a balance between exploration and progression. I have the same issue with Minecraft because you can easily beat the game with minimal progression or building. It feels super unrewarding and boringly repetitive. Now, at this point, I was about ready to write Starbound off as a game I just never fully get into. And then, I found Frackin' Universe. Frackin' Universe fixes everything. Progression is fixed. Exploration, it's fixed. Awkward chosen one story, it's completely optional. It turns Starbound into the game it always should have been. The game that 13-year-old me thought he was buying. It does this by completely fixing the progression system, adding multiple different progression trees to the game that allow you to work towards higher level technologies, which allows you to complete research steps leading up to it with a clear idea of what you're working towards. To progress, you must explore, and when you are bored of exploring, you have tons more you can research, craft, and build from the things that you found. It makes crafting and building feel rewarding and connected instead of a third wheel, which is something I haven't had from a survival crafting game in a long time. The cycle and the ratio of exploration to progression are perfectly balanced by Frackin' Universe, and also very addictive. Now, Frackin' Universe doesn't remove the story entirely, but it does make it completely optional. You can still do the original storyline if you want, but it's not the only way to progress anymore. Some aspects are tweaked, for example, the Urkius mining facility mission, where the story has been altered so that instead of your interstellar travel relying on that mission, the mission is an optional side quest. Frick. And a lot harder too. However, if you do want a version that keeps the main storyline as, you know, an essential part of the game, while also removing the boring scanning quests and making the bosses even harder, well, the modding community has it covered, because recently I saw there was a mod for that called Frackin' Universe Tweaked Story. It claims to merge the main story with Frackin' Universe and replaces the scanning quests with Frackin' Universe ones. bumping up the difficulty for these bosses so that you need to spend more time progressing in between. I just learned about this mod myself, and it might be worth a go at some point. I'm super grateful again to the community for maintaining and updating Fracking Universe's overhaul. No more Chosen One nonsense, no more urgent world-ending threats that politely wait for you to scan chairs, just pure, rewarding, space fantasy survival. If you've ever tried Starbound but bounced off it after playing for a short while, maybe it's not the game itself, it's just how it was balanced. Or actually rather how it wasn't, I suppose. Now, I will acknowledge that some people just love the base game and the story for what it is, and I respect that. I actually envy you a little. I wish I could ignore this stuff and just enjoy it as is. These are all just my opinions about Starbound's overall experience. If you like this, YouTube thinks you'll like this video next. If it's wrong, blame the algorithm. See ya!